Good afternoon from the Gossett Team House. We decided to do this one inside. You can see the weather in the stadium behind us. I'm Wayne Viener. That's Tony Wheeler. You probably know him as Wheels. This is the Big Dog Postgame Show live from College Park. We're happy today. Off to our right, you probably can hear it, is the parents and team party going on inside today. But Tony, what a second half for the Maryland Terrapins.
You know, Maryland executed their game plan to a T, and after the game, Coach Gate talked about it. I mean, Maryland just had too much midfield depth, really wore down Syracuse on both offense and defense. They had no answers, and it seemed inevitable, didn't it?
Yeah. Oh, once Maryland got going, they just didn't stop. By the way, before we get into this, Bruce will drop in for some commentary from the studio. This is the Big Dog Postgame Show. I want to roll a couple highlights here, and we'll be back in College Park in a second. The Big Dog Postgame Show is brought to you by Viener X Consulting. We make your company work. And by Rick Jacklich, the Big Dog himself, at the Jacklich Law Group. Stovall with the bomb from the outside for Maryland. Seconds in the quarter. Keegan drives. Scores. Look, the Terps really didn't have anything going in the first quarter. It looked a lot like Loyola. Syracuse didn't do much better, but it seemed like Syracuse had a lot more shots. And we look at the first half stats, and Syracuse actually did have more shots, but had a slim lead. What'd you make of their offense, the fact how fast Syracuse was trying to get the game to go and how Maryland tried to slow it down?
It was pretty clear that Maryland didn't want to get into a running game at all with Syracuse, and by and large, limited. Maryland got the only transition goal of the entire game. But that first half was interesting. Syracuse outshot Maryland 21-12 in the first half and was really putting a lot of pressure on Maryland the whole game. But Maryland's defense just hung in the entire game until Maryland's offensive midfield could finally just wear down that Syracuse defense.
There were a lot of possessions where Syracuse would get into the 20s, take a shot, it would ricochet off of somebody, and you got another 60.
That first quarter, Maryland called a timeout early. Syracuse had two shot clock resets, and Coach Stillman had to call a timeout just to give his team a breather. And Syracuse came out of that very extended possession, probably 3 total minutes without a goal.
Logan was fantastic and kept this close when he had to. The Terps started the offense up quickly in the second half, and then Syracuse takes a couple of penalties, and Mason texts in, well, that's how Syracuse plays. The undisciplined part got him.
Did.
And then Maryland just uses almost the whole first minute, scores at the end. And then on the 32nd one, uses about 25 of that and scores at the end.
And Maryland was just always around the ball that second half. You know, they get a rebound goal at the doorstep. They get a couple shot clock resets themselves. And really, you're right, Wayne, just Syracuse starts making mistakes. Maryland doesn't make many mistakes at all. They finished the game with only 12 total turnovers, 4 turnovers in the second half. And really, Syracuse could not maintain their intensity, started making mistakes, Terps throwing away.
It's hard not to bring up Joey Spallina, who can get, and I'm making these numbers up, 10 goals against Vermont, but comes out here and gets, was it 2 goals and 2 assists?
2 and 1.
So he almost got his 22. He ended up with 21. Will Schaller, he got beat a couple times, and you could see that coming.
Right.
And then Maryland changes a bit, and they don't really get to, Syracuse doesn't get to that screen game again. You know technically more about this sport than I do. What did Maryland do to take away what seemed to be an easy setup?
Well, those first 2 goals he had him back-to-back on possessions. One of them, I think you could argue, might have been a moving pick on Syracuse. It wasn't called.
Yep.
But that's them trying to play to Spallina's strength and that indoor box game. After that second goal, you can tell Maryland really tried to clean up their communication on the pick. Instead of going under picks, they really worked hard to get over the top of picks. And Spallina just couldn't get his hands free. He just had no opportunities the rest of the game.
Overall, you saw a team that I thought, if any of this was going to the very end, and then Maryland gets a working margin. Syracuse seems to start to press a little bit, which causes them more problems. They had some beautiful passes, but at some point, the behind the back, this is from basketball or lacrosse or anything.
Yep.
Once you start relying on trying to pull magic tricks out, it usually doesn't work. It works once or twice, and as they did that and they fumbled the game away, you wish that they had just gone back to fundamentals and try to run that pick play.
Yep.
Or a screen. If they're not going to call it, run it again.
Right.
It's not a penalty if you don't call it.
I think for Syracuse, I think the thing I'll be looking at for the rest of them, because look, you want Syracuse to do well from here on out. Yep. Richmond knocked off UVA today. Yep. That makes Maryland's opening game win look a lot better.
Who beat Penn State today?
Princeton by a goal in overtime. One thing you gotta look for, I think, for Syracuse moving on, their top six might be on offense, might be the best top six in the game. So good, so skilled, so slick. Their close defense is really good. On offense, there's really not much behind that top six. And their defensive midfield, as we saw today, Maryland must have run 8 or 9 midfielders at Syracuse's defensive midfield. And you could tell in the third quarter, Syracuse was gassed and they started hopping into a zone. I can't remember last time I saw Syracuse hop into a zone on defense, but I think it was in response to their defensive midfield just being really, really tired. I'm going to be looking at that the rest of the season because I think Syracuse, if they get into too many games like this, especially come playoff time, that defensive midfield got exposed today.
Right. So we're going to hear what Bruce has to say and a word from the big dog himself and the new Viener X Consulting. And we'll be back in College Park to wrap this up and look forward to Princeton next week.
All right, Wayne, what a great game. I know the weather was tough out there, but the Terps 11-7 in a game where I don't remember last time the Terps were underdog at home. I really don't, but they were. But who cares about that? But down 5-4 at halftime, they came out with a 7-2 second half. Great job by the entire squad. This pointed out Jack McDonald, 7 ground balls, 1 caused turnover. Logan McNanny, 12 saves. He was special. He'd get my player of the game. A.J. Larkin with the big juice goal, the long pole goal, and he also got some ground balls. And look, Maryland was down 5-4 at halftime and just came out and dominated 7-2 in the second half. Kelly had 2 goals, including the one that put the Terps into the lead, 6-5. Spanos had 2 goals. A.J. Larkin 1. Bryce 4-2. Snowball Keegan, Urksa, and Dubik each had 1. That's Elliot Dubik, the baby brother. And it was a big goal. It was a man-up goal in the first half that helped a lot. And look, Syracuse came in here thinking it was going to be their game. They were going to win. I'm sure Gary Gate thought the same thing. But that's not what happened. That's not how the game went. When Maryland kind of took over that second half, it seemed like Syracuse never had the ball. Now, the face-offs were even at 12-11 Maryland, but it just seemed like the ones that mattered went our way, especially when they were gathering up the lead. And just Spanos and Kelly, big goals. They each had two big goals that kind of put the game away. And Urksa had 1-1, so it's 5-1. Actually, Spanos had 2 assists. That's 5-3 for the attack. Overall, great game for Maryland. Look, Syracuse is one of the best teams in the country. There's no doubt. Look at their first 3 games. Spallina had like 20 points himself. Joey Spallina did have 2 goals against Will Schaller, who played great. Okay, and he's been scoring at will. He had 2 and 2, and he did give them the lead late in the first half. But I thought Schaller overall did a great job on Spallina. And they just keep coming at you, the shots, when you play Syracuse. But a great win for the Terps. Elsewhere, real quick, Richmond 13-10 over UVA. Hopkins 9-8 over Loyola, same kind of game Maryland had. Army 9-3 over Rutgers. Georgetown 15-9 over Penn. Notre Dame 22-8 over Marquette. Villanova 13-9 over Yale, and Princeton 11-10 over Penn State. Maryland goes to Princeton next week. Should be a great game. Princeton is certainly a top 5 or 6 rated team, and Maryland's gauntlet of a schedule continues. Wayne, back to you. Great win. Congratulate all the guys for me.
So Terp fans, if your family's injured in a car crash, you'd be barking mad not to call Rick and the Big Dogs at the Jacklich Law Group at 855-BIG-DOG-1.
But as you know, Coach, it's not the last win, it's the next win that's so important. And that's why we continue to hustle, continue to work so hard for all of our clients to earn that name, the Big Dogs from the small firm. Just like you do. You get your guys hustling all the time.
That's why we love you, Rick.
And most of all,
Go Terps!
Wrapping this up in College Park, Maryland 11-7 over number 2 Syracuse. The player of the game, as I texted Bruce and Mason, talked to you, has to be Logan. We're going to throw some stats up here that Mason gave us, how he's catching up and passing Nico Amato. He's clearly an all-timer. Of course, you see the same thing there.
Had a great game today. He gave up 1 goal that I'm sure he wants back, but the rest of them, I mean, he was gobbling up shots. He was making tough saves look super easy.
Something you brought up last week or 2 weeks ago when we were walking out here, you said Jack McDonald's going to be back. He's going to be out for a couple of games. You want to tell that story?
So Jack McDonald played 2 games his first year. From what I understand, a combined 14 minutes. NCAA made him sit out the first 2 games of the season. You get a guy like Jack McDonald back. He is a top flight long stick midfielder. You got AJ Larkin, who scored a goal in transition today. He's going to be the next great long stick midfielder. So now you got 2 A+ long stick midfielders. Allows you a little more depth on the defensive end. And that experience that McDonald brings back, you can't replicate that.
So Maryland didn't have to give, say, George Stamos a long pole. They didn't have to make any adjustments.
No.
So how does that make the defense more suffocating or extend the level of shutdown?
So Peter Lake, the freshman, was picking up the long pole. It allows him now to go back down to close defense to be that 4th defender. Keeps them fresh. Jordy Holmes also picked up a long stick from the LSM. Maryland ran 5 short stick defensive midfielders today and just stymied Syracuse's midfield.
If you're a Terp, it was great to see. If you're a Syracuse fan, you're still watching this. Thanks for watching. And a couple of adjustments. A bounce one way or the other, and that's a different game. But Maryland takes it. I'm sure to move up in the polls. We're going to have to be quiet as the announcements are starting to our right. We'll wrap this up. Tony, thanks for being on Terp Talk. Thanks for watching. Terps take it. We'll see you after Princeton next week.